Hello and welcome to Hippie Hyena. This week, we're talking about the news that Elliot Page is now Elliot Page, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard. If you haven't, then all it is that the famous actress Elliot Page has come out as trans, I believe trans non-binary, but goes by he, them pronouns, which in many ways is not that much of big news. I mean, good for them. I'm glad about it if that's what makes them happy. I've been a fan of theirs for a while, ever since they appeared on the excellent Canadian sitcom Trailer Park Boys, which if you get a chance to watch while it's still on Netflix, you should go ahead and do it, because it's probably going to leave soon. So being that I'm a big fan of Trailer Park Boys, I've followed Elliot's career to a certain extent and thought he's been great in pretty much everything he's been in. I especially noticed what a great actress he was when he appeared in one of those David Cage games, or is it David Cage? There was a scene where it was a flashback and he was playing a younger version of the character that he was playing the rest of the game, a kind of maybe 7-year-old, maybe younger, and the motion capture was really good, and I was thinking to myself, wow, they must have brought a child in. At the time I was actually working with children, and so I was very familiar with the way that they sort of walked and moved, and I assumed they'd just got an actual child and put a motion capture suit on them, which is something, having worked with children, I know would be quite difficult to do. In fact, trying to get a child to do almost anything that you want them to do is quite difficult. But then I found out it was in fact Elliot Page in the motion capture suit doing a perfect rendition of a child's body language, and I was extremely impressed by that. It's a sort of hidden feature in a sense, because it's not the sort of thing you might immediately notice, but I think he's very talented. Anyway, so he's come out as trans, and you might expect that certain people in the chud community are unhappy about that for some weird reason. So I think we'll go and have a look at Sargon. He's got this new channel called Lotus Eaters. I haven't really covered Sargon on this channel because, other chuds and idiots like, Caitlin Bennett and the other people I've covered are sort of generally funny, whereas I find Sargon just mentally draining. He reminds me of these sorts of really drab, farty people who I used to know in school who were just obsessed with cars and wanted to be Jeremy Clarkson when they grew up, and I just can't stand to be around that sort of boring and kind of Dunning-Kruger effect. I think Sargon has a different effect for British people than he does for Americans, because I've heard that the British voice makes Americans think that the person speaking it has some sort of authority or intelligence behind them. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, being a Brit, I'm immune to that, so Sargon just seems like a very dull, and in both senses of the word, person, dull intelligence and dull in his opinions. He's literally a person who's decided to spend his time just droning on about issues that don't affect him online. Anyway, so let's see what Sargon has to say about Elliot Page.
You may have seen in the news recently that the actress Ellen Page has come out as trans and renamed herself to a one Mr. Elliot Page.
So in the first sentence, Sargon manages to misgender Elliot and also dead name him. So I guess I should say trigger warning if anyone's got a problem with rampant transphobia. Expect to see a hell of a lot of it in this video, because that's basically obviously going to be Sargon's take on this piece of news. And on a personal note, can I just say I really, really hate it that he's got a British flag behind him, the Union Jack. Because I know that flag has a checkered past, of course, but it really, really gets my goat when racists, bigots, misogynists, idiots, patriots, whatever you want to call them, wave it around. I mean, for God's sake, we're not American, Sargon. Have some bloody decorum.
And this was done, as is traditional, via Twitter, and was very well received. Here you can see what he had posted to Twitter. And I just wanted to go through it and address some of the points that have been raised in it, because there are lots of unanswered questions, and this presents us with a kind of riddle that really I think these questions do deserve answers.
Oh God, Sargon is just such a charisma vacuum. Listening to him is just, this is really hard. I have to say, this is one of the most difficult videos I've had to make, just because I find him so personally insufferable. Just his whole method of the way he talks and the sort of his choice of words and his unbelievable smugness. It's like a absolute walking Dunning-Kruger, and everything about him just rubs me up the wrong way. It just literally makes my skin crawl. Anyway, on a sort of related note, this sort of notion of, there's just some questions I want answering. It's just the most mealy-mouthed, feeble, kind of dog-whistling nonsense that I'd have ever heard. Like, I almost have more respect for Posey Parker, because at least Posey Parker is sort of like an obvious proud bigot, whereas Sargon in this video is just sort of playing this game that he obviously thinks is really clever, where he just sort of skirts around the issue and it's sort of like droning, monotone. It's like mentally monotone, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not just like the tone of his voice is not like expressive enough for like an ordinary British human. It's like his brain, his mind is like not expressive enough. It like doesn't change pitch or tone. It's like stuck on this same thick idiocy that he just can't seem to move off the tracks of. It's just continuously on this same... I mean, at least the other people are sort of wilder, more interesting. Sargon is he's just the worst. He's just the worst.
Elliot says, "Hello friends, I want to share with you that I am trans, my pronouns are he, they, and my name is Elliot. I feel lucky to be writing this, to be here, to have arrived at this place in my life. I feel overwhelming gratitude for the incredible people who have supported me along this journey. I can't begin to express how remarkable it feels to finally love who I am enough to pursue my authentic self. I've been endlessly inspired by so many in the trans community. Thank you for your courage, your generosity, ceaselessly working to make this world a more inclusive and compassionate place. I will offer whatever support I can and continue to strive for a more loving and equal society." So far, nothing particularly egregious or outstanding. Thank you to the people around her who have been encouraging her on this journey that she's going through, and terribly grateful for all of this. And she wants to help make a more inclusive and compassionate society that is also more loving and equal.
No, Sargon, she doesn't. He does. I have a friend who transitioned from male to female, and when they first came out to me and my group of friends, I did find it difficult to use the correct pronouns. Not because I disagreed or anything philosophical, it's just that I'd been so used to referring to this person as a he that sometimes she slipped out accidentally. But if, for example, I was ever writing a message and I had a chance to review what it was that I was saying, I would correct it, because that's the polite thing to do. That's the non-arsehole-y thing to do. So there is absolutely no excuse for Sargon to keep misgendering Elliot Page in this video. And trust me, as someone who makes videos, I'm sure probably a lot of you listening make videos, you will know that pretty much anything you put in a video is your choice. You've chosen to put it in there because you've recorded it, you've edited it, you've listened to it a bunch of times, and you've had a lot of chances to check that that is really what you want to say, and you can change it if you want to at any of those points before the upload. Even after the upload, you can delete the video, set it to private, whatever you want, re-record it if you find there's something that you've missed. It's still possible you've missed something, but I don't believe that's what's happening here. Sargon, like the incredibly dull kind of person that he is, really enjoys saying things that are deliberately upsetting to people, because he's sort of mistaken that for a certain degree of rebelliousness. He kind of thinks that's cool to do, but it's not. That's what like a 7-year-old thinks is cool. It's like, if you play any online games that happen to have a lot of squeakers in there, they say the sort of idiotic shit that Sargon says because they are too young and dumb to understand that it's not cool. It's kind of cringe. But I mean, I'm fucking old, and Sargon's older even than I am. I think he's even might be a dad. It's like, my God, how's your brain been stuck in like the sort of 7-year-old position? It's incredible.
On the surface, there's nothing much to criticize there, although I think that there are definite questions around what compassion, inclusivity and equality actually mean in these contexts, because these words are generally used as, honestly, platitudes.
No, they're not, you stunted little dwarf. My God, they're not platitudes. And I can definitely see why someone like Sargon might think they're platitudes, because they are literally words like compassion, equality, are words that have no meaning or interest in his life, because he's absolutely compassionless. He's uninterested in equality. In fact, he supports its exact opposite. And these aren't questions, Sargon. They're deliberate transphobic criticisms of what should be a heartfelt, vulnerable moment, and it's something that should be celebrated, if anything. But quite frankly, it's got nothing to do with your life, Sargon.
But when you actually dig deeper into it, is it compassionate?
Yes.
Is it equal?
Yes.
Is equality good? Is it inclusive?
Yes.
The answer to these questions is often no.
No, it isn't. Literally, the answer to every single one of those questions was yes. Obviously, unequivocally, and without reservation, yes. Yes is the correct answer on this one, on all of those. And any deviation from yes, even a yes but, is the wrong answer. If you ever find yourself asking yourself the question, is equality good? Then you've really made some wild missteps with your reason, possibly your life. And maybe you should do some real distinctive soul searching, or take measures a little bit more drastic in Minecraft.
And that's a different topic for another time. This is where I found it getting really strange. He says, I've got to be very politically correct, remember, I also ask for patience. My joy is real, but it's also fragile. The truth is, despite feeling profoundly happy right now and knowing how much privilege I carry, I am also scared. Scared of the invasiveness, the hate, the jokes, and of violence. To be clear, I am not trying to dampen a moment that is joyous and one that I celebrate, but I want to address the full picture. The statistics are staggering. The discrimination towards trans people is rife, insidious, and cruel, resulting in horrific consequences. In 2020 alone, it has been reported that at least 40 transgender people have been murdered, the majority of which were Black and Latinx trans women. So, we'll pause there for a second. I find it very interesting how one's joy can be real, but also fragile, because it makes it sound like what is happening is something is being projected out into the wider world, and we are being expected to comply. And if we don't comply, then this is the fragility that we are encroaching on. We're shattering the joy for not agreeing.
Now, this is the most stark-staring, insane take I've possibly ever heard on this channel. Literally, this one takes the biscuit, and it's utterly deranged takes like this, when sort of spoken in this unbelievably smug tone by Sargon, is what makes getting through his videos so difficult, and why I haven't covered him yet. Only somebody as totally smooth-brained as Sargon could possibly come to the conclusion that when somebody is expressing vulnerability, he's reinterpreted that in some mad way as requesting that he comply to something. It is so bizarre. It is so bizarre, and says something about his psychology, and I guess the broader psychology of the movement of which he's a part, that they really don't understand consent at all. And I don't mean this just purely in the situation of something sexual happening. I mean, in any sense, they don't understand consent. How does he not understand where the boundary between different people's volition is? I just don't get it. And furthermore, perhaps more importantly, how has somebody with such sort of obvious psychological or mental learning difficulty type hang-ups ended up being some kind of commentator on things? Like, who is even listening to this absolute idiot? Like, how could it be possible that when someone goes, look, I've got something to tell you, I'm coming out as trans, I feel like I've got the body that I was born with is the wrong gender than the gender I feel inside, and I just really hope that people can treat me with respect and for expressing this vulnerable and difficult thing to express. And Sargon hears that and he says, fascist! Which is especially funny considering Sargon hangs out with literal fascists. He has a D&D game where they roleplay as Nazis with people who are literally Nazis that are his friends. And yet he's calling Elliot Page a fascist because he wants to be called he, or would just rather people handled that situation with kid gloves, or even just treated him and other people like him with basic dignity and human rights. The truth is, Sargon actually doesn't view this as fascism or encroaching on his rights in any sense. He doesn't, because he's not that stupid. But what he realizes is that if he really expressed the reason as to why he's got a problem with this, that's just not justified in any sense, that it's just raw, blatant, obvious bigotry. So he's sort of trying to couch it in these mealy-mouthed terms of like, oh, I just have questions, or he's saying that it's in some bizarre way encroaching on his rights, which is just nonsense. Because here's the thing, what that reveals is Sargon knows he's wrong. He knows that he is wrong on this. And if even he knows he's wrong, why should anyone else take on board what he's saying? Well, they shouldn't, because he's an idiot. So here's what you should do. Make yourself a person who's accepting and inclusive, so that if anyone you know is going through something similar to what Elliot Page went through and is continuing to go through, you can make it just a little bit easier for them. And if anyone out there is listening who is going through something similar, just know that despite the reputation of the UK, there are vast numbers of people here who care about what you're going through, who care about your rights, and who care about you being treated with dignity. Because if one of us isn't free, then none of us are free. So solidarity, comrades. Look after yourselves and each other.